All right. What's up, guys? Been a while since I used this setup, so things aren't going as smoothly as I would want them to go. But we're here. Alex MacDonald, joined by Larry Cox. Larry Cox from This Week from Rockdale. This is This Week in Rockdale. Larry's This Week from Rockdale, right?
That's right. We've got all of Rockdale covered.
We do. We have
the inside and outside, and even if it's the Earth's molten core not turning, we've got it.
Yeah. It's been a while since I've been on here. I'll explain why in a second. I've visited with Larry once or twice, but it's been a while since I've been on here, and that's because of I guess a commitment I made. We'll explain that in a second, but before we do, let's say hi to some friends here. We've got who's here? Lisa Lancaster is with us. What's up, Lisa? Tina Hobbs is here. Hey, Tina. Charlotte Gellert is here. Hi, Charlotte. There's Danielle Munoz. Bill Campbell's here. What's up, Bill? Cheryl Moulton is here. What's up, Cheryl? Judy Bond is here. Hey, Judy. Good to see you again. And Voices for Rockdale is here. And Renee Simpson's with us as well right now. If you're watching, say hi in the chat. Speaking of which, I am attempting to get this working as intended. There's there we go. There's the comments. Excellent. So now that should be working. There's Midge Johnson. What's up, Midge? Good to see you. Funny thing is, Cheryl's comments are not showing up there. Did you see that? I do. I see it in one chat. I don't see it on this screen. Whatever. I'm sure it will work itself out. Bugs, Larry.
And we all know. I mean,
it's been a while on this channel, so bear with me. By the way, we'll start taking calls probably around 9 o'clock, and I'll bring the number back up so that anyone that wants to call in is able to. I'm hoping that we'll have Janice Van Ness calling in, but we shall see. So let me explain why I haven't been on for a while. Back when this what was initially the Judicial Taskforce was created, I told Janice Van Ness, I told Sue Sanders, I'm going to step back. I'm going to let the task force do their work, and I'm not going to say anything until they're done. And that's exactly what I did. I'm a man of my word. I took a step back, didn't say anything, let them do what they were tasked with doing. Well, they've completed their work, Larry, and now it's time to start talking about it. And I'm going to try to be, all right, so I'm going to be as fair as I can be. But disclaimer, I can tell you I am 100% opposed to everything they've come up with. But I'm still going to try to be fair because that's just me. I'm opposed to it 100%. Doesn't mean other people are going to be opposed to it. But I'm going to try to be as fair as I can, Larry. You've seen the report, I'm guessing. You've seen the report that came out. Let me jump over to here. I'm going to turn that off for a second. This is the judicial. It's now the Judicial and Administration Complex. Let's talk about that real quick. What started off as a Judicial Task Force is now the Judicial and Administrative Task Force, Larry, because this has morphed. All along, we've been told we need a new courthouse. We need more room for the courts, right? That's what we were told. Their whole justification was we need space for the courts. Apparently they need an awful lot of administrative space as well, because this has grown well beyond. In fact, the scope of the courthouse has shrunk from the initial proposals a few years back, has shrunk, and the administration has become the bulk of this new plan. We'll talk about it. But that was the justification for this. We need a new courthouse. So listen, we went through the initial vote, $140 million. The people of Rockdale voted it down. They said, oh no, we don't want that. So Oz did an end run around the voters and got this PFA enacted. I skipped a part. We voted it down. They had a courthouse committee, if we remember that, Larry, that came up with some proposals. One of them, a reasonable proposal, utilizing property at Parker Road for around $30 million. And then they came up with a second proposal, which was right around $100 million that would have been the massive boondoggle that the county has wanted all along. Well, then they shelved those plans, did nothing with them. They were all developed and paid for, by the way. Exactly what this Judicial Taskforce just did has already been done, but didn't get the results Oz Nesbitt wanted. So once again, put in a drawer, never to see the light of day. Did an end run around the voters, went to the legislature, got this PFA passed. The PFA have $110 million to play with. So then they put together this new task force. It was chaired by Janice Van Ness. Janice may call in a little bit later in the show. It was chaired by Janice Van Ness, had some other folks on the committee, including a couple of judges.
Which in my opinion was a conflict big time with one of those judges.
I mean, as that particular judge owns property in Old Town, yeah, I'm going to say there's a bit of a conflict there.
And he also chooses 2 members of the eventual PFA committee.
Yeah. So they were tasked with coming up with some concepts, effectively, for what is now a judicial and administration complex. They've completed their work and they've presented some ideas, Larry.
Alex, but they were limited in what they could provide. They could only provide ideas that the courthouse would be built in Old Town. Everything else was off the table, is what this committee was told.
Mm-hmm. Yep, their instructions were handed to them on a platter, and they were forced to abide. I say forced to. There were 2 judges on this task force that were more than happy to abide with the Old Town Conyers mandate. They've come up with a number of concepts that we'll look at. Spoiler alert, every single one of them, except for one, costs more than $110 million. The one that comes in under $110 million is $108 million. I have some questions about these budgets, but we'll get into that later. So that's where we're at right now, Larry. The task force has done their work. They've done what they were instructed to do, what they were mandated to do. We now have the plans here, and we can start taking a look at these things and get an idea of what the county are planning. So let's I don't think we need to go through all these acknowledgments, but let's talk about the members of the committee. There was Wendy Armstrong. These are the citizen members: Wendy Armstrong, Dr. Stephen Boyle, Frank Beaufort, Donald Murphy, Doug Smith, and Janice Van Ness. Janice was I guess nominated, elected chair of the committee. Then we had these.
Now I want to just. She was elected chair twice.
Okay.
She was elected during the secret meeting we were not supposed to know about.
That's right.
Then they pretended to elect her at the first public. Remember, they were meeting in secret.
Yeah.
Weren't going to even, and then someone leaked it.
That's right.
Then it was exposed, and then that's when they had to start meeting in public.
That's right. It was after that secret meeting. It was after that I spoke to Janice and I spoke to Sue, and that was when I said, okay, well, listen, whatever. I think I said to Janice, let's just make sure we're transparent moving forward, and I'll take a step back and just let you guys do your work. But yeah, that's right. Yeah, that initial secret meeting, that's funny. Then we have the county members, the Chief Superior Court Judge Robert Mumford, Sheriff Eric Levitt, and State Court Judge Richard Reed. They were the county members. And the design team they worked with was Jericho Design Group. I guess it's worth mentioning that. So,
and I got an email that said that Jericho was paid $54,250 for their services for this task force.
Mm-hmm. How much?
$54,250.
That's how much Jericho was paid?
Yep, and it was a agenda item 2022362.
Okay, that's fair enough. Program description. Current courthouse must remain but should be renovated. $19.6 million in upcoming SPLOST is allocated to the courthouse. Address both court and administrative facility needs. Determine the need for a parking deck. Determine the need for green space. Has to be located in Old Town Conyers. County property already owned in Old Town will be provided. Address office/departments currently in Old Town complex. Judicial, I guess these are requirements for judicial: Superior State Magistrate, Juvenile Probate Courts, Clerk of Courts, DUI, District Attorney, the RCSO, Courthouse Staff, and Public Defender, and they're mandated to eliminate a current rental facility. And then for the administrative side, they have to accommodate the BOC, the Tax Commissioner, Finance, Stormwater, Board of Assessors. You see them all there. Keep costs manageable, as well as in consideration of parking issues. The county did not intend to consolidate other departments located outside of Old Town, such as tech services, fleet, EMA, fire admin, transportation, RWR operations, code enforcement, elections and extensions services. However, if the task force feels otherwise, please make suggestions. Project size maximum $110 million. The task force, from my understanding, were provided effectively the requirements, the needs of each department, Larry. And this is, quite frankly, one of the most concerning things to me. And we're going to take a look at some numbers here that relate to future growth in Rockdale. But before we get to that, Larry, how much did the population grow during the last census?
We were like at 94, right 94 and some change. And before that, we were a little under 90, Al. So it was
around
like 5 or 6,000 people.
So about 5,000 people over 10 years.
Yeah. But we've got to look what the county's really pulled a maneuver in the last 12 months. They have authorized nearly 5,000 new housing units.
Sure.
Because Oz made a statement at a little forum that I attended with him that the county would skyrocket to over 100,000 people in the next 5 years. And there's no certainty it's going to do that, even with those housing units, because I think it'll just be a switch for this or that. Because, but that was the attempt to get the skyrocket to there, is by those high density housing units. But you're right, Alex. And we've got another factor. We have a decreasing school enrollment, which usually means, when you look at all the other counties in Georgia that declined, when their school enrollment declined, their total population declined.
Right.
And that's a trend.
Yes. Yeah. So 500 a year, let's say, for the last 10 years. We expect that maybe to grow a little bit because of all the housing they've approved. But listen, I don't expect for it to grow much beyond that. But let's take a look at what the county are projecting. For for all these administrative, common space, BOC admins, things like that, these last two columns are current staff and proposed staff. On the administrative side, Larry, they're proposing going from 118 employees to 167. I don't know. Listen, I don't know how long the rollout is for this jobs program, and I call it that because that's how Oz Nesbitt treats this government, as a jobs program. But their plans to go from 118 to 167, and that's just the people that are going to be included in these facilities. That doesn't include the people in the facilities outside of the city. On the judicial side, they plan on going from 156 employees to 259 employees, Larry, on the judicial side. That's a remarkable growth of government right there, don't you think?
It is.
How are we going to pay for this? Let's ignore the courthouse for right now. How are we going to pay for this increase in staffing? They're virtually doubling. It's about 40% increase, to be honest. But a 40% increase in salaries, in benefits, in pensions, unfunded liabilities, insurance, all that stuff. How are we going to pay for that? Well, we know how we're going to pay for it.
We're going to raise taxes.
We're going to have to raise taxes to exorbitant levels. Because again, I don't believe they're going to see the kind of growth they're expecting from all these townhomes that they're authorizing.
It's not going to happen now. I mean, and then we also know that they do not pay those employees a measly salary.
No, they pay them.
The Rockdale County employees, especially directors, deputy directors, are paid significant salaries.
They're paid remarkably well.
I was in a meeting with someone yesterday of influence in the county. It's a confidential meeting, but very reliable source. Mm-hmm. So, and I've done a little tally of that over the last 30 months of how many directors have left or fired, been whatever. It's 23. Do you know the number the chairman said and how many directors have left in the last 3 years?
I don't, but I'm certain it wasn't 23.
4.
Okay.
So and then the person
seems about right.
And then we know there was a group of us, and then one individual in the room who had this this information and said that chairman said 4, and then when said he actually spoke to personally 6 former directors who had left and asked them if salary was a reason, and they said no. They were very compensated very well for their jobs. Right. It was environment.
Yeah, environment. But that's a glimpse of what Oz Nesbitt has in store for us, regardless of this new boondoggle they're planning. A 40% increase in staffing and staffing costs. And folks, that's not going to be inexpensive. That's going to cost us a fortune. But let's get on to these. Let's get on to these plans. The task force visited a number of places, just like the courthouse committee did back in 2018. I think it was, wasn't it, Larry? When was the 140? 2018.
2018.
They visited some other counties. I don't think any of them are necessarily comparable counties to Rockdale. When it comes to population size, I don't know. How big's Newton population-wise compared to Rockdale?
20,000 more people.
20,000 more people. But whatever. Yeah. Whatever.
I mean, Walton County would have been the comparable county.
Yeah.
As far as population. There are several that are comparable population-wise, and they didn't go to those.
Yeah. In the defense of again, I'm not going to go after the task force here. They did what they were told to do. They did what they were assigned to do, and they've completed the job. They did it as volunteers, and fair play to them for getting it done.
Well, I would also say that it was a group of individuals that were appointed to those positions that they knew were going to come back with a favorable result. These were hand-picked people who were going to be yes people.
I mean, I don't know all of them,
Yeah,
so
these were handpicked yes people. They did not make the mistake they did the first time with the 2018 uh, task force. They were
right,
too many
right.
independent-minded individuals on that task force.
Right, but they went and visited some other cities to look at some relatively new construction, administrative and judicial that took place in those areas, and then started coming up with their own recommendation reports. These are some graphics that Jericho has put together. Let me zoom out here a little bit so we can. Or am I zoomed in on? Nope.
No, you got all that right there.
Yeah, let me zoom out on this so we can take a look at some of these things. Hopefully, folks can see them reasonably well on the screen. I can probably jump over to here and give you all a slightly better view. And let me see if I can maximize that, make that full screen for you. Hold on. No, I think that's as far as that goes. So there you go. These are the, I guess, government-owned or leased properties in Old Town Conyers at the moment, Larry. Does that seem about right?
It sounds right. Those are the facilities that I think they will be combining or that will be impacted by the admin courthouse project.
Yeah, the only one that's leased according to this is the public defender's office on the south there, just south of Main Street, across from Milstead Avenue. That appears to be the leased building, and that was in their mandate to do away with that lease. So I don't know what that's going to involve, but it is what it is. Here are some site concepts and phasing. Why is this? There we go. Now it's letting me zoom. Here are some site concepts and phasing. You can see phase 1 in red there. Phase 2 on one of these plans is in a blue box. Phase 3 green up there, which is supposed to be a parking deck. We'll get into the details of these phases as we go. I just want you guys to be able to skim these documents to get a brief overview of what they're proposing. The next several pages represent early versions of the proposed site solution for the complex. The first 3 options, A, B, and C, were presented to the task force. The task force preferred option C, and the design team developed that option further in diagram concept C2. The task force recommended option C2, which is the version that reroutes Milstead Avenue. Graphics for this version start on page 32. So let's jump down all the way. Come on, zoom out for me. Let's find page 32, shall we, Larry? Wherever that is. Oh,
keep going down.
By the way, I don't know what just happened there. Let me reload this. I want people to see these little conceptual graphics that Jericho did. Where are we? Here we go. Keep going down. Keep going down. They came up with these, I guess, well, you call them 3D renderings of what they're proposing. No building details or anything like that, Larry, but just some visual representation of what they're envisioning down there. Notice right there on North Main Street is a horrific looking parking deck, which is going to end up taking focus in this whole thing because it's going to be front facing to the public, and we're going to have to look at that thing every time we drive into Old Town. It's not going to be the rustic city we're familiar with, Larry, I'm afraid to say. Again, just some concepts, some 3D graphics that they threw together, and I thought people might be interested in seeing these. You can find this report on the county's website, by the way. There you can see the proposed rerouting of Milstead Avenue around the parking deck back down to the new admin building. Anyway, this is concept C2. This is the one that the task force preferred, I suppose, Larry. And you know, I guess they put together some pretty pictures, right? Let's take a look at some of these cost estimates. Concept A, this is not one of the preferred concepts. Phase 1, $78 million. Well, phase 1 would be the courthouse itself, Larry. Phase 2 would be the new administration building addition. Also renovating the existing courts for administration. And then phase 3 would be to demo the existing admin building and build the parking deck. The total for that would have been $130 million. I think I lost Larry there. Bear with me, folks. Let me just double check that. You there, Larry? It's reconnecting. We'll see if he calls back. So that was, this is concept A. Then there was a concept A reduced, which would have built a smaller parking deck by the looks of it. Yeah, because it would have been a 350 space parking deck in the concept A. Concept A reduced 200 parking spaces. That would have been $115 million. Let me see if I can get Larry back on the call here. Then we go down to concept B. There he is. You're back?
I am back.
All right. Then we get down to concept B, which would be simply phases. Well, phase 1 would become the courthouse and admin building and a 350 space parking deck. Phase 2 would be to renovate the existing courts and finish the administration building. So the admin building there, I guess, is split into two components, a $22 million component and then a finish component of an extra $8 million. That would cost $117 million. All of these, by the way, over and above the 110. Here's the concept that the courthouse committee preferred. Concept C, phase 1, new courthouse, new admin building, demo existing admin building, and build a 240 space parking deck. And then phase 2 would be plaza/site improvement and renovate the existing courts for a total of $116,640,000, still in excess of the $110 million. And then there's this concept C reduced. This is the one plan that comes in under the 110. It's a new courthouse, new admin building, demo existing admin building and build the smaller 240 space parking deck in phase 1. And then the plaza site improvements and renovating of the existing court in phase 2 for a total of $108,540,000, Larry. So that's what the task force, in conjunction with Jericho, that's what they came up with. The cheapest option is $108 million. Well, $108.5 million.
Well, this is a problem I have with this, Alex. I don't believe their numbers.
No, I
don't believe their numbers. And this is, and I had, like I said, I have had some meetings in the last few days, and I had a conversation with someone in government that actually says the real number is 220.
Yeah.
In the three phases, total 220. What they really intend on doing.
The ultimate goal is what you're saying. The ultimate goal. These phases that we've been shown here are simply a portion of what they may ultimately want because they have $110 million to play with, is what you're saying there, right?
Yeah. Yes. But what they really want to do is 3 phases that will cost $220 million.
Okay.
And these are just the, if you've watched, you watched the show on when I talked about what I felt was going to happen. They were going to break ground, get the construction project going, get this thing looking halfway ugly, then say, hey, we don't have enough money and we can't leave it this way.
Let's talk about that. When I saw these numbers, I work in this industry, right? I'm a project manager. I know how these projects go. I looked at these budgets, and they include a number for soft costs, and soft costs are, things like marketing and architectural fees and design fees and, rental fees and permits and stuff like that. But at $108.5 million, you're not leaving yourself a lot of leeway. They've made no accounting for change orders, problems that they run into, having to, when they inevitably run into infrastructure issues and they have to address them. It's going to start costing money. And it's not unusual to see these government projects, quite frankly, double in cost. We see it all the time, right? We see these government projects all over the country end up doubling in cost. Look at I think it was the courthouse in San Francisco that actually ended up tripling or quadrupling in cost. Let's forget about the high-speed rail. That was a government project that was just an absolute joke. These projects generally don't go well. So I sent an email to Sue Sanders. The reason I sent it to Sue is because it's Sue Sanders who's managing this project. And I said, I see the master plan concepts have been published. It's interesting that all but one of the concepts exceed the $110 million budget. Even the concept that comes in at 108.5 is dangerously close to the $110 million budget. So tell me, what happens when you inevitably run into problems? How are we going to fund change orders, overages, etc., etc.? The PFA is authorized to issue $110 million in bonds. Will the rest be additional new taxes? I got a response from Sue. She didn't answer the question, but I did get a response. It said, good morning. The master plan document is the recommendation from the task force. This is not a design document or the county's construction budget. It takes the needs given from the elected offices and departments and correlates those to a concept that the task force recommended that accounts for the space needed and rough cost estimates. If you'll refer to page 40, you'll see the following note for clarification. Below are rough order of magnitude cost estimates for each concept. Once detailed design begins, the cost estimates will be more developed to achieve the project cost of $110 million. During the design process, the budget will be refined, and we'll have to work closely with the stakeholders to define wants versus needs so that we can remain within budget. We also plan to get the design firm and construction firm on board early, working together to ensure that we remain within budget. Here's the thing. It's one thing to try to ensure you remain within budget. It's another thing to be able to predict the future, especially, and no offense to Sue Sanders, but especially when the person running the project isn't a project manager, has no engineering background, no construction background, and in my opinion has been thrown in the deep end, quite frankly, with this project. No offense to her, but I'm familiar with projects like this. You cannot put a novice in charge of something like this.
I've been on projects where someone's had 8 or 10 years experience being given a large project and still wasn't qualified to do the project. Mm-hmm. And they actually had an education in the field, but were not qualified. And this person doesn't even have an education in that field.
Exactly. What we're going to end up doing is hiring qualified project managers to actually run this thing, because one scheduling error can cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. One simple scheduling error can mess you up. These have to be run like clockwork. And even then, things go wrong. And this is my whole point. Okay, these are concepts. These are what they call rough costs. They're not rough costs. They, mark my words, when they come in with the final design will pretty much match this, and they're going to price it at $110 million, slightly less. And I'll tell you why. Because they know when they start rolling in with change orders, the county's going to have no option but to find a way to fund those somehow. Because what are they going to do, Larry? Just spend the $110 million and then stop?
And leave a half-built structure with infrastructure destroyed,
right,
with roads blocked and half destroyed. And that's what you'll get with that project.
Right.
Because there's no room to stage anything. So you're going to disrupt business and flow.
Mm-hmm.
Because look at the concepts. They all succeed in manipulating what's there now.
Yeah. And we're talking about Old Town, where logistics are going to be a nightmare. This isn't like building at Parker Road, where logistics would be a breeze.
Where it was wide open.
It would be a piece of cake.
You would be over in them acreage where nobody was around, and you would be impacting nothing. You would have just as much of an area for lay down and construct and management area as you would construction area.
Exactly.
You don't have that in Old Town.
No, you absolutely
don't.
You're
going to be bringing whatever you're going to do each day,
you're going
to bring in and unload.
Which is why scheduling is so critical. Which is why a novice cannot run this project. They just can't. You can't store goods. You can't stockpile goods. You can't have materials there for even for the following week, where they're planning on developing this. A novice cannot handle this.
Alex, and didn't you notice there was one other thing where they talked about working with the stakeholders closely?
Mm-hmm. And
if we look, there's been several questions, and then the 2018 election, 70%, no matter how it's been asked or what the vote's been, 70% is the number that people don't want that. So if you would have actually gotten stakeholders that represented what the individuals wanted, then shouldn't 7 out of 10 of the people that are on the task force have represented that we don't want it in Old Town? I'm just saying, Alex.
Well, here's the thing. This administration, they don't care about any of that. No, I'm not saying the task force. The task force did what they were instructed to do. And, again, fair play to them. They did what they were instructed to do. This administration doesn't care what the people of Rockdale County want. This was voted down already.
It's been voted down. Questions were asked by the Democrat and Republican parties this past spring, which said we don't want it built in Old Town. Another option should be available. 70% is the number.
They did an end run around the voters. They did an end run around the taxpayers to get this done. The cheapest option, based on what Jericho presented, and remember, Jericho presented these plans to Jericho is a for-profit company. They're not doing this out of the goodness of their heart.
I got $54,250 to do this.
And they're going to get even more in the future.
They are going to get a lot more.
They've presented, first of all, what they believe will be enough to secure whatever contracts thereafter. And they presented one remarkably pared down. They presented one option that came in under the $110 million budget. And they know full well that this project is going to far exceed the $110 million. But let's assume they come in at the $110 million, Larry. What's it going to cost us as taxpayers? Because
hundreds of millions.
The $140 million would have been financed over 30 years. This is going to be $110 million over 40 years. And I don't know if anybody's noticed, but we're in a pretty bad economy right now. The yield on municipal bonds is quite high at the moment. The county issue these bonds, investors purchase them, right? Investors right now are expecting a certain level of return for their money. I don't know what the face value of these bonds are going to be. I don't know if it'll be $1,000 chunks or $10,000 chunks or whatever they're going to be sold as. But they're going to be expecting a pretty good rate of return. The rate of return back in 2018 would have been around 6%. It was going to cost us about $350 million. I did some research this week, and we're hovering around 8% on muni bonds at the moment. Over 40 years, we're looking at over $400 million in total costs for this 110.
Do you recall on my show I say a number all the time?
Mm-hmm.
That this is going to cost us over $500 million.
$500 million.
So I mean, with your calculations, with that 400, the original 100, I mean, isn't that $500 million?
Now, of course, we don't know what terms they're going to get on their bonds. We don't even know when they're going to be issued. We do know one thing: they've already violated their agreement, their terms with the state legislature, because they said they would not levy a tax on the taxpayers of Rockdale County until the bonds had been issued. Well, they levied that tax this last go around. We're paying additional taxes right now to finance this. So they already broke their terms there.
Commissioner Williams' exact statement was, if we don't do this, we won't be able to qualify for the bonding.
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
So we were not in a fiscal way to qualify for bonding unless we increase taxes. I mean, that's what they admitted.
Right.
They were not fiscally sound enough to bond the job.
Right. Well, let's not forget.
But that's not what they told the legislature either.
Well, let's not forget one thing.
Current mismanagement of funds.
Let's not forget that.
The financial literacy of this board is not where it should be.
We can't for that. That's our former finance director talking about the financial literacy of this board. Even if they come in at the 110, which they will not, I guarantee you they will not. But
Alex,
even if they do,
this project is a more ambitious project than what the 140 was.
Yeah, it really is.
It really is a more ambitious project. Yeah. So that's why you and I both know, being in the construction business, we're both in construction. We know those numbers are make-believe, what they're dealing with. Those are this is like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, guys. Those are make-believe numbers.
Yeah.
But they don't have to be real. Yeah. Because they're going to sell this fantasy to the people, and then afterwards, well, these things happen and they were out of our control, and we can't leave this hole in the ground or this building half destroyed or this half built. We've got it, and they can't.
Yeah.
They won't be able to.
You could do this courthouse and parking deck over at Parker Road for around $45 million. That could be paid for with SPLOST. They're already saying in this document, it says they're going to have to take money from SPLOST for this.
Yeah.
They've already said that. In addition, that's in addition to the $20 million. It's in addition to the $20 million they've got earmarked for the courthouse renovation.
And what the PFA is going to do.
And I have no problem with them taking money from SPLOST for this if it were covering part of the $110 million. But it won't be. It will be taken to cover overages because their plans are a pipe dream.
You know, one of the things we discovered through this whole problem, when we objected to the SPLOST and we ran that campaign, and then it passed, and we found that the county actually has to do a process to where they actually have to present to the Superior Court permission to grant the bonds. Well, you know, we were all sort of confused about that, and then we figured out what it was, and then with the Rivian thing, they had to present that to their Superior Court judge, and they actually proved that was not a sound financial investment, and that judge ruled they couldn't issue the bonds out.
Right. Now, they also said, by the way, they're going to present this to the public, right? When they were discussing, remember when they were discussing the PFA and they had their public hearings on the PFA, the consultants they brought in to get the PFA said, well, we won't do anything without public hearings, right? We won't spend any money. We won't issue any bonds without public hearings.
And that's in the legislation, actually.
Yeah.
So, but we don't have a PFA.
So here's the thing. I'm going to go out on a limb and wager that they're going to consider this task force. And the fact that the task force meetings, we forced them to have them in public because remember that first meeting was secret. They didn't want the public there. We forced them.
The legislation
into making it
says
public.
the PFA has to have the hearings.
It does? Okay.
Yeah,
Well, we'll see if that
But we don't
happens.
have a PFA yet.
We'll see if that happens, and we'll see if they pay any attention to people, because people are overwhelmingly opposed to this.
When they find out, and they will find out how badly they've been duped, people are going to be angry.
Yes.
And the biggest thing about it, all this is going to really hit the crapper right around the 24 election primary cycle.
Yeah. Well, unless they kick things into high gear now and start moving forward. And I wanted to mention this. I got a message earlier from somebody who asked, is there any way to stop this besides voting them out? No. Well, there's one way. Filing a petition for injunctive relief, filing a lawsuit. The grounds would have to be the fact, in my opinion, the grounds would have to be the fact that they've already, how can I put this? They've done what they told the legislature they would not do. They've levied a tax before they've issued bonds.
And then I think there's another way to delay it until the vote, and that's through if they try to bond, then show that they're not fiscally able to secure the bonds and pay the bonds, which I don't think would be hard to do.
We could also try to start a movement telling people do not volunteer for the PFA committee, because it has to be made up of members of the public, because we did away with that provision. And I think they thought about this because remember they wanted the board of commissioners to be able to serve. I think maybe they considered this. We've got to try to convince everybody to refuse to serve so that they can't even staff the PFA. That will stall it. It won't solve it, but it will stall it.
And if I think it has to be stalled. And I mean, the only hope of stopping it ultimately is delay it and Oz Nesbitt lose election. That's
the key, is to delay it and beat Oz Nesbitt. That's how to, again, a petition for injunctive relief costs money. I don't know if anyone has an attorney that would be willing to do it pro bono to help the county out. But that's one option, because this board of commissioners have already violated the terms they set with the legislature for passing this legislation. Those discussions are a matter of public record. I know it's not included in the legislation itself, but those verbal agreements have to mean something.
This is what I think. I mean, and I've told you this. I think there's only one member of the legislature who actually understood what was going on, and he sold us out. I don't think the rest of them have even understood what was happening. It was above their heads.
Yeah, I don't know why this passed. I don't know why they didn't listen. You
remember, Al, they actually, the two state senators pledged to us. They made pledges that they would not pass this. It would have to go to a public vote. They wouldn't approve it.
Doreen Carter came to that meeting. She listened. She didn't hear a single person speak in favor of this.
Nope.
She saw dozens, and it's rare to get this many people at a meeting, but she saw dozens of Rockdale taxpayers. And she doesn't care because the majority of her votes come from another county. But she saw dozens of Rockdale taxpayers say, we don't want this. There's a perfectly viable option to be done over at Parker Road that would be affordable and would solve the need that we were told they had, the need for judicial space. That's the need we were told they had. Go back and listen to the PFA meetings. Go back and listen to those.
We'll go back and listen to that and the 2018 stuff.
Tell me where they talk about demoing the existing admin building and constructing a new one. Tell me where they said that in any of those PFA public hearings.
They talk about the critical need being the courthouse, the ADA, the applicable conditions that the employees work in. That's what they talk about. They do not mention anything about the admin building and all. But then all of a sudden, when this task force materializes, it was the secret squirrel top secret task force. Then when it materialized, it becomes this is what I'm telling everybody. This is not a courthouse project. This is an admin project.
Yep.
This is not a courthouse project. What I call it is an admin with a side of courthouse.
Yep. Yeah. This is a admin.
You get your Big Mac with a side of fries. This is your admin with a side of courthouse.
Yep.
And that's truly what it is.
Let's go back and see what folks in the chat are saying. Nobody's calling in, so I'm going to turn that off. Jericho's gotten a lot of work in the county. Yep. How many years could they pay that rent before it reaches 110 million? I mean, I'm going to say a lot of years. So RWR is planning to move to the building and leave their lovely blue building. Also, elections office moving from their space on West Avenue. I don't know. Again, looking at the concept C, that would appear to be the case. Yes. Higher taxes once again. Yes, absolutely. It was going to have to be. Or they go back and petition the legislature to increase the amount of debt that the PFA is able to service.
Well, and then the PFA, then the county is going to have to raise taxes to pay the bond.
Yeah. Bill says that RWR operations will stay in the blue building. Let me see. What else have we got here? Love this county, but tired of taxes going up. Amen, Jacob. Newton County's was paid with their splossed excess collections. That's interesting. Paid it with their excess sploss.
Well, yeah, Alex, I'll tell you some numbers I was told the other day. So this sploss it's ending right now was supposed to be a like $77 million sploss. Do you know what it's going to end at? 124.
124. Now,
so and this one is estimated at like 94, right?
Well,
so it's probably going to end at around 144.
Yeah. Well, let me ask this, and maybe Charlotte's talking about this. Maybe it's the excess that's left over from past splosts. And I know that those funds are supposed to only be used for projects included in that particular splost. But did Newton somehow get an exception to that rule? Because we have money left over in previous splosts. We know that, right?
Well,
don't know where that money is, by the way.
Well, I had some people that actually were looking at some stuff the other day, and you know what? These are people that know, and you know what they said they couldn't determine? They can't determine actually how the host money is spent, Alex, because they said that it seems to be the Bermuda Triangle when it comes to the host money. It comes in, but they don't know where it goes, and they don't know where it goes out.
Yep.
So the SPLOST, I mean, and I talked to folks on the SPLOST committee, and because we've had a committee, they've been able to control a lot of that. But this overage, they're not honest about the overage, Alex. They're not.
No. Look at what Charlotte said. See pending bid number 2237 for project manager services. So yeah, they're gonna be paying for project managers, and that's a good thing, quite frankly, because again, Sue would be, again, no offense to her, but I don't expect her to be able to manage this project. I don't. It's not her area of expertise. So don't take that as criticism. She's just a remarkable novice when it comes to this. They're going to have professionals run this project. There's no choice about it.
Well, you know, Al, I mean, I've been meeting with people the last month, and so right, we've been discussing what in the world do we do, right? and we've all come to the conclusion that we have to defeat Oz Nesbeth.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to tell you right now, I mean, there is a heck of a coalition coming together behind the scenes.
Well, we have to delay this and defeat Oz Nesbeth.
Yes.
And again, the avenues for delay are there's a number of them. Again, if somebody knows like Lisa, for example, if somebody knows an attorney that's willing to file for injunctive relief, if and when the time comes, the time has to be right to do that, obviously, then I would ask that person to volunteer their services to make that happen. We've got to spread the message far and wide for people not to serve on this PFA committee, for not to sit on the PFA. That will delay it.
Unfortunately, I think
he'll handpick his friends.
There are 5 psychos that will.
Yeah, he'll handpick his friends, obviously, but it's an approach that can be taken, right? Listen, there's a lot of cancel culture, peer pressure stuff going on in this country. I'm not above doing that for people that do volunteer to sit on this thing. I'm not above exposing their dirty laundry to the public and getting the public to see what these people are actually all about and demand of the county that they not be allowed to sit on these committees. And trust me, we are very good at getting dirt on people. I'm not above it. If it's going to save the taxpayers of this county $400 million, I'm not above a little dirty work.
Al, if you and I would say today, we want the dirt, our email boxes would be full tomorrow. Then you and I'd be researching for 2 months.
Right.
But our boxes would be full tomorrow.
Yeah. The 140 did not include the admin facility. That's absolutely right. That's absolutely
what I'm saying.
Right.
This new project is much.
Oh, they've had to cut back the one thing we were told we needed, which was judicial space. That's the one thing they've cut back on.
That's the only cut.
It's the only cut. Is the one thing we were told we desperately needed. It's absolutely amazing.
And when you came up with the concept plan for that building at Park Road, and it was purely just a judicial facility.
Yeah.
That didn't fit the mold at all, did it?
Lisa makes a good point there, but you know, there is a principled attorney somewhere that might be willing to. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe principled attorneys don't exist. Maybe I'm
Alex,
wrong.
I have a guy.
Lisa, so Strickland voted for this PFA? Yes, he did.
No, not only did he vote, he wrote it.
Yeah.
He wrote the legislation.
Yeah.
And that's what. And when I mentioned the one person who actually understood it and sold us out, that's who it was. It was Brian Strickland. He doesn't represent us anymore, and he knew he wasn't going to represent us anymore when he did it. He knew he was getting redistricted, so don't know what his buyout was.
I love this kid, by the way, Josh. If y'all haven't seen, oh gosh, which meeting was it where Josh?
It was the tax meeting. Yeah.
That's right. It was one of the tax public hearings. Josh got harassed. First of all, he got harassed outside.
He got yanked up and cuffed.
Yeah. Was obviously released because they had no actual grounds to hold him. He was released and he came in and gave a wonderful presentation to our board of commissioners. It fell on deaf ears, obviously, because we saw what happened. We got the tax increase, and that was where I believe that was the same meeting where Sherry Washington said we live in a dictatorship in Rockdale, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Even Sherry Washington knows what's going on here. That's where we're at, folks. We're facing a massive project that's going to cause massive disruption, is going to, it's going to have massive cost overruns, and is going to take way longer than, we don't know how long they're going to say it's going to take. But whatever they say, probably double it. It's going to destroy Old Town Conyers in the meantime. The disruption to business in Old Town is going to be horrendous. All because Oz Nesbitt wants his legacy, and one particular judge, well, I'm not going to say that.
Well, and I would, what, no, and
I'm not going to say that.
Don't say it, but I'll tell you, I was also told this week that there's probably a handful of very rich, powerful people in Rockdale County that they want it also.
Are we talking about land and property owners?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
We won't name any names yet.
But there are some rich and powerful people.
But like I said,
there's only a handful of people. There are not a lot of people that want this, but it's rich and powerful people.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm not afraid of getting into the dirt when I need to. And we may need to on this.
Alex, I'm gonna tell you, the high density housing thing. I know someone who was offered $2.1 million for a piece of property they paid $400,000 for a few years ago.
That's nice.
And they refused to sell their property.
Interesting.
Because they said they were not going to get him. They said they didn't believe in what was going on in this county.
Mm-hmm.
And they were not going to contribute toward it, even if it meant they were going to make $1.5 million on an investment. They said, we're going to do it. They said $1.5 million is not worth what that would do to the community.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there are people out there that still care about this community, that, you know, someone that turned down $1.5 million profit. And, you know, I'm not going to say who that person is right now, but at some point I am going to say who that person is. Right. Because that person may be the person that can take Oz Nesbitt out.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, there's got to be complete transparency through this process. Obviously, they tried working in the dark. I sent an email to the county reminding them of the sunshine laws. That was when I got a phone call from Janice, because you know, nobody, in their defense, nobody had considered it. Nobody considered that this was, in fact, this is an official county task force, and therefore it's subject to all the sunshine rules. Why they hadn't considered it is beyond me.
But Alex, when I found out about it and made some phone calls, I was asked not to say anything and to not, and you know, I was the one that found out and told everybody. Okay. I was asked to please not tell anybody.
Right.
That they would do the right thing.
Yeah, we'll do it. I promise we'll do the right thing.
So, but you know what? They need to hold on.
Yeah.
They were not going to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm. You're talking about potentially $400 million. Yes, they need to hold on. And we do need to know the backgrounds of every single person that sits on that PFA. I think they should be required to provide tax returns and financial documents, Because the amount of money we're talking about, the burden they could place on the taxpayers of Rockdale, we need to be absolutely certain the people on that committee are above reproach, that they have no ties to any of the contractors, that they have no conflicts of interest. There can be nothing.
Alex,
there.
throw your names up there again, because I've talked about this person before, but I want to expose somebody.
Put this up, you mean?
Yeah, the names of the committee.
Oh, the committee? All right,
task
hold on.
force.
Let me go back to page 1 or 2, whatever it was. Bear with me.
Mm-hmm.
The names of the committee members, right?
Mm-hmm.
The public, and where was that? There we go. These names.
Okay, do you see that name, Doug Smith?
Yes.
Doug Smith, and I'm going to say another name, Fred Straub. You remember when we had the vote no splost?
Yes.
The Rockdale voter group filed the necessary documents to become a legal organ that was allowed to put signs up,
Right.
and we were allowed to actually campaign no. Doug Smith and Fred Straub ran an illegal,
right.
Dark money campaign with the vote. And I know this. I gave both investigators' offices information to where they bought the signs, where they picked up the signs, and where they distributed the signs.
Right.
But both the Secretary of State and the Ethics Commission said that it fell within each other's realms.
Right.
So
there's no enforcement.
No enforcement.
Right.
So,
which is why it's going to be incumbent on us, the public, to bring a level of transparency to this. It's going to be up to us to research the backgrounds of these people.
But I do want to mention, you've got Doug Smith, who sits on that committee, who ran a dark money campaign for the splost.
Illegally.
And that happened. Illegally.
Yep.
That happened.
Yep.
I mean, and they can cry and whine because I'm saying this right now, but it happened.
Mm-hmm. Well, we showed the forms on this show this week in Rockdale. We showed the forms with the signatures.
Yeah, I mean, it happened. They ran the dark money campaign. I mean, you were not allowed to do what you did, and you did what you did, and you didn't care that you broke the law.
Yep. All right.
So
listen,
I mean,
let's
what will you do?
Yeah, let's wrap this up. That's what we're looking at, folks. Whether you think this is a good idea moving forward, whether you think this is a terrible idea moving forward, that's entirely up to you. If you think this is a terrible idea, now is the time to delay, and vote out Oz Nesbitt. But it has to be delayed. If they break ground on this, then it's going to be too late. It's going to be too late. Unless Larry's elected, he said he'll shut it down day one, is what Larry said. So
I would get sued and whatever.
Yeah.
Al, I'm when I come back on the air on the show on the 5th, you'll do a little bit of spoiler here. I am going to talk to everybody. I don't think I'm going to run. I've got another plan. We all know that I've said I'm not going to run for chair of any Republican organization. I'm going to be an independent. What I'm going to do is educate Republicans how to participate in the Democrat primary and still vote in the general election as a Republican, still vote for their choice for president in 24, but be able to vote against Oz Nesbitt in the primary.
Okay.
And still get to do all the voting they want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I've researched this, really looked at it. I just think the best way to beat Oz Nesbitt is in the primary. I think there's somebody that's going to run in the primary that's going to have the resources, the finances. I've met with them for several hours over the last 2 weeks. They've told me what they want to do, how they're going to do it. Just a lot of information. And with the coalition that I think can be built, I think Mr. Nesbitt, we've never had a person to win 3 terms as chairman in Rockdale County. And I think there's a reason, because they piss everybody off.
Right.
And I think that are at the level of the the pissing off is at a max, and especially with the high density housing, the tax increases, and this courthouse thing. I think that the chairman's going to go to this election with a lot of negatives, and I think that the money that this person's going to be able to spend, and with the coalition they can put together, I think Mr. Nesbitt could take the ass whooping of all ass whoopings.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's Janice. She likes the idea for qualifications of the PFA board since it will significantly impact the taxpayers. It absolutely will. But that's where we're at, folks. I'm going to start wrapping this up. We have some concepts that have been presented. The county, I guess now we're going to have to move to develop actual plans. But the task force did what they were tasked with doing. And again, I don't want tonight to seem like we're beating up on the task force, because I'm certainly not. They just did what they were tasked to do, and they were given guidelines. They couldn't think outside the box, even if they wanted to, because we saw what happened when they allowed a committee to think outside the box. They came back with a really good plan for $25 million over at Parker Road. That's what happens when you let taxpayers actually do what they want to do.
Well, what did they come back with, Alex? They came back with a courthouse concept.
Yeah.
For $25 million that did not include admin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, now it's a matter of delay, and if necessary, disrupt.
Delay, disrupt, and defeat.
Listen, government is all about peaceful protest. I'll get involved in some damn peaceful protests and disrupt this entire process. I'm sure we can get a number of people to sit on the one street they can use to actually move materials. It's not hard to disrupt this entire thing. And again, this government's all about peaceful protest. Now, whether they're all about it when it's us doing it remains to be seen. But as long as you don't break any laws, we know that people can block freeways. We know they can, because we've seen it happen. The authorities let them do it.
We know you can torch police cars.
Well, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about actual peaceful protests, actual peaceful disruption.
I read the other day that setting police cars on fire isn't violence.
I'd see a talking head on CNN said the same thing. Well, you cannot commit violence against property, was their argument.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Tell that to Memphis tonight. We're going to talk about that tomorrow, Larry. I don't know if you're on Locals, but if you are, we're going to cover that tomorrow on Locals for supporters. That's it, folks. We're going to wrap this up. Larry, thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate it. When are you back on your show? February 4th, I think.
February the 5th. It'll be next Sunday.
February 5th. All right. Well, tune in this week from Rockdale for Larry Cox. And folks, there's the information. Do with it what you will, honestly. And if you think this is a bad idea, you got to try and reach as many people as you possibly can, and quite possibly get people geared up to protest, to start delaying this thing, because we're looking at potentially, well, right now, based on the current economy and the face value of these bonds, you're looking at a $400 million total cost for this project. I don't think Larry's far off when he talks about $500 million. When you factor in overages, delays, change orders.
I think right, and I'm right in the ballpark.
Yep. All right, brother.
Unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. Thank you for watching, guys. Larry will be back on February 5th. I'll show up here and there. We appreciate it. Good luck. Fight the good fight. And get rid of Oz Nesbitt in 24. Good night, guys.